Hello?
Queen Tut,
Yes.
it's Jason and Trish. How are you today?
Hey, doing well. Expecting your call.
Yep, I got all those emails from you. You are really on a tear.
Yeah, a lot of research has been going on here involving Cynthia McKinney and RDS.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, now, as you requested, I did reach out to Dr. McKinney yet again, and she didn't respond. Now, I haven't fully brought Trish up to speed because I felt like it would be a good opportunity for you to explain both to the crowdsourced community members and to Trish exactly where we're at. Because the interesting angle here is, when Trish and I were in London a couple weeks ago, that was where this really first came up. We were at breakfast, and I said to Trish, because Trish and I both really hold Dr. McKinney in very high regard. And I asked Trish if she had ever seen any interviews or even any photographs of the two of them together, and she said she hadn't. But by lunchtime, when we went online to check, we did see one Skype interview with them from Jaguar Girl something or other, and it had just been posted 3 hours prior.
Right.
Very
And
interesting.
Cynthia was in Bangladesh
Right.
at the time.
Very, very interesting.
Queen Tut, I feel like this topic is expanding to the extent that I really want Trish and you and I to really collaborate on this moving forward. And after we establish the basis here, maybe we can even take it to live call-in stuff, because I think that even if you're on voice only, we want to preserve your identity, obviously. But I think that the members of the crowdsourced community are going to want to get into the chat and ask you questions, because there are still a lot of people in our community who initially did donate to this Unrig campaign, and a lot of people were feeling pretty burned. I was trying to get my money back. I just got the refund yesterday, and American Express sent me a notification, or I should say GoFundMe sent me a notification saying that the Unrig campaign was trying to block my refund.
Wow. That's
That I'm with
disturbing.
Trish. That's like astounding that they
Yeah.
are actually. I mean, that's pretty obvious evidence there. Like
Yeah.
any money they get their hands on, they're going to keep, even no matter if there's an objection to it.
Yeah.
Queen Tut, I had seen an interview on InfoWars when they were talking about the Unrig campaign, and just all of the body language coming from RDS was just deeply disturbing to me, and suggested, a lot of, maybe ulterior motives, or I'm not sure what's going on there. But that was like the first time I sort of had the reaction. It was like very weird up until then. And then it was just like, wow, big red flags went up for me.
Yes, and I think here's one statement I want to make in response to that. There's a theme here that I see going on. I mentioned this in an email. I've had a number of people contact me. Jason has gotten intel that he's forwarded to me because I've been doing research on this, and because I introduced the first idea, Jason and I did in June, about this scam, the Unrig scam, and we're able to prove it, with the documents from his own site.
Mm-hmm.
There seems to be a decline going on. And this is addressing what Tricia said. There seems to be a decline going on with the male interviewers of RDS. And it seems now that the only people who really interview him now are females.
Interesting.
Yes. And what's interesting to me is that latest interview with Carrie Cassidy, that I went back because I saw some of those comments from the crowd under, one of the other interviews with myself. And I went back and actually watched that interview with Carrie Cassidy more in depth, and because of one of the comments from the persons in the crowdsource. And I was like appalled at the badgering that I saw Robert David Steele doing when he was interviewing Carrie Cassidy, who's a female,
Yeah.
And I was astounded at this. And then I started looking at that theme. And I discovered there's a theme going on here. Hardly any interviews from males. It's severely declined, and it's only it seems to me, females who don't understand this dynamic that's coming off of Robert David Steele, which I consider to be abusive.
Well,
He's predatory in nature. That's what that body language that I was talking about was like, oh, yeah, he sort of looks like, a wolf.
Yeah.
He was certainly abusive to me.
Handing her his next meal kind of thing.
He certainly tried to be abusive to me in our phone conversation that I recorded, and so I think that this is, we can observe these behaviors, but rather than delve too much into our opinions about him, Queen Tut, why don't you share with us some of the evidence that you've found?
Okay. Yes. Okay. Before I get into this evidence, let me share this with you. After reviewing all this evidence and the intel and doing lots of research, actually, with a number of videos, also people sending me things, and then the intel of somebody who's part of the Unrig campaign, actually, and receives all the newsletters and the logs and stuff.
Right.
I just want to make this statement. It's my assessment that Robert David Steele and Cynthia McKinney have a pay-to-play operation going on.
Wow. What do you mean by
that? And
can you define what you mean by that? Yeah.
Yes, I will. I just I want to give a context for the stuff I'm going to plug in right now.
Yes.
My statement to add to that is that it may be small scale, but we don't know who the large donors are in the Unrig campaign.
Right. Right. Because, of course, a number of people in our crowdsourced community made, I had contributed, I think, $50 or $60. And, by making those contributions, that's how you got into this, receiving the newsletters and all that kind of thing. So there was certainly a large number. We raised over $10,000 for that campaign in an hour.
And do you know how much he's raised so far, Queen Tut? Total?
According to his budget, it's $92,900 and something. It's almost $100,000. He says.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And that was in that email that I had forwarded to Jason last night that I wanted you to see, because I know you understand budgets, Trish. So I wanted you to look at this, because when I went through that budget that's posted on his Unrig site, there is no budgetary output for anything that he and Cynthia are doing together. So I went through the whole thing, and all you see is money going out for this used RV for about $65,000. Okay, and you don't see anything being spent on an event, a touring event. Right. Okay, there's no touring events going, so that means there's no. They're not doing what they
He's just
are
driving around in an RV, basically.
Yeah.
Queen Tut, the number you sent me was $92,922.42. That was last night.
Correct.
Wow.
Correct.
Okay. That's because do you recall, Jason, when that day he was on the phone with us?
Yeah.
He had raised all of $2,000.
Yeah, it was a very, very low number, and I think we were somewhere. Yeah. Our community put in something between 10 and 15,000. I'll have to go back and review the video.
I think it was over 15.
Might have been.
Yep.
Might have been.
Well, but, I've got. Oh, excuse me. Go ahead, Trish.
I'm trying to find that budget, but my laptop's frozen. So
I'll
go ahead.
I'll send it again.
Yeah. So anyway, to go into some of the evidence here, I've got an email here from Cynthia McKinney, a response. I went to her site and I put an email in there. This doesn't have to do with the numbers yet, okay? But this is a start, because after listening to a recent interview on Sarah Westall did a recent interview, one of the most recent interviews with RDS. And I'm looking. So I listened to that, and I was appalled, at the statements being said on there. Okay, and so I sent this email to Cynthia McKinney, and she responded to this email, and then I sent her another email in response to that to see how she would respond, and she just ended the conversation. Now let me give you what the email says. In the email, I said, "Do you support Robert David Steele's attacks on Ron, Rand Paul, Dennis Kucinich, and Tulsi Gabbard. I'm providing the exact quotes from the video interview, Robert David Steele, Unrig and his alliance with Cynthia McKinney. His attacks are quite damaging to your position on unifying people.
And vulgar.
And vulgar. And here's the quotes. I give her the exact quotes from her. Ron Paul, Rand Paul, Dennis Kucinich are all frauds. And I put the time, 28.
Yeah.
Then he says, Dennis Kucinich is not willing to put his balls where his mouth is, and neither is Ron Paul.
Ridiculous.
Okay. Then the next one is Tulsi Gabbard is a fraud. Okay? So I send those exact quotes to her. I give her the link, and then she responds by, I do not agree with his words and have told him to please refrain from baseless attacks. Okay?
I feel badly for Cynthia. I just, I could be entirely wrong about this, but I feel like she's caught up in something she doesn't quite know how to deal with.
And you
frankly.
know what, Trish? I remember when I first brought it to your attention in London, that was the way that you felt. But at this point, I tried to contact her on Facebook that very day in London.
Yes. Yeah.
George had her personal cell phone. He sent her a text message about this.
I've reached out to her. She hasn't responded to me.
I wrote back to comments on her Facebook page. I sent her an email from the official email contact submission on her All About Dr. McKinney or whatever it is, her official website there, which it indicated that she was active in the chat room at the time. Now, that might have been someone who works for her or someone who uses her handle on there just to answer questions, but none of these things have been met with any response. And my emails to her have been along the lines of, hey, Dr. McKinney, I hold you in very high regard, and I think, we're receiving information that indicates that Robert David Steele may be trying to co-opt your credibility to raise funds, and we think he may have purposes other than what he's stating to you. Can we please have a private conversation to discuss this? And she hasn't written back at all. So I feel like if there was something going on that she didn't know about, she would at least contact George, who she's met or spoken to or to whatever capacity they know each other, and said, hey, what's going on? And the fact that that hasn't happened, I find troubling.
I agree.
Okay, this is part of her complicity in what I consider this pay to play. It may be on small scale, but it's part of her complicity because she doesn't, at some point, she stops responding. That's the beginning of her MO. That's the framework of her MO in this situation. She's a very intelligent person.
Yes.
She was a congresswoman for a number of years, okay?
Right,
PhD.
and I remember seeing her grilling Donald Rumsfeld.
Right.
And I followed her for more than a year. She's done incredible work to expose corruption. I mean, she's been, and then I remember her radio show was canceled abruptly on her, earlier this year or late last year. So, she's been put through the ringer for being willing to speak out. I mean, so that makes me really angry.
Well, those were all the reasons. You've just listed all the reasons why I like her.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm going to make this point, and then I want to finish up with this response that I sent to her that she didn't respond to, okay? Once again, part of the MO, and then I'm going to lay out some other things. But I forgot. Lost my thought there for a second.
That's okay.
But basically, she has this way of just letting things go and hoping that no one pays attention to that. All right?
Right.
Oh, here's the thing. She does not. I believe, Cynthia is not being held to the same standard that she expects from other people. And I'm going to show that in this, when I lay out a little bit more information here. She is not, she needs to be held to the same standard. And I believe that that's going to be clear. Okay, now
in terms of transparency and accountability, you mean?
Exactly. Especially with this, this is my opinion from everything. This is going to be my opinion, but especially relationship to the Unrig scam. It's a total scam.
Okay.
All right? And that's what it needs to be called because that's what it is.
Right.
What's the objective of it, do you think?
Get money.
Like, what's the point of it? Just to generate cash for them or at least for as long as they can make it work? Or,
Well, that's
is there some other underlying motive there?
Absolutely. I believe the bottom line is money for Robert David Steele.
Well, there's another thing, Queen, that some of the intelligence contacts that we've spoken with have relayed to me,
right.
that they're also, Robert David Steele, by his own admission, is a, quote, former CIA operative. And of course, many people have heard that that's the type of thing that once you're in that business, you're never out of that business. We have had independent intelligence contacts reach out to us and tell us that he's active again, and that what the Unrig campaign actually is doing is trying to identify patriots like Queen Tut, like you, Trish, like me, like the members of the crowdsourced community who would be inclined to stand up and to resist in the form of freedom of speech and news reporting and doing the type of thing that we're doing right now, and to identify those people and essentially put them on a list, much in the same way that the CIA created the Fair Play for Cuba Committee, a totally fake committee where Lee Harvey Oswald stood out on the sidewalk handing out flyers. If someone goes and joins that committee, they say, there's a communist sympathizer, let's track that person.
Right. And they probably told Robert he could keep whatever money he raised or something.
Exactly.
As part of the deal.
Exactly.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
And you think, and you believe that Cynthia is aware to that extent of what's going on? Or do you think she's not acknowledging it because to face it would, sort of undermine a lot of what she's doing and she just doesn't want to know? Or what do you think about that?
I expect she's being influenced or somehow forced to do this. That's
how I feel. I can't imagine she would knowingly or willingly embark on such a...
What do you think, Queen?
Plan. I don't know.
Well, here's what I think Cynthia knows. Okay, I've written a document and provided to Jason. Let's start with what Cynthia knows. Former Congresswoman knows that the Election Reform Act is a scam, yet she associates with it. You know why? Because Cynthia knows that this bill has to be written and then submitted to Congress before it becomes an act. Cynthia also knows that there is no bill, there's no submission to Congress, and that there will be no act. Yet her Twitter account links to the generosity donation page, that's just from yesterday, where it states, then we'll co-sponsor and pass the Election Reform Act of 2017 in September, in time to restore integrity to Congress for the duration of Donald Trump's term. Okay? Her Twitter account links directly to that. Let me go on further. Cynthia also knows that there have not been any touring events or forums because she's not even in the country. Yet she still links to the Unrig donation page. Cynthia McKinney knows that RDS is soliciting donations in her name to pay off her student loans, taxes, and to provide some type of compensation.
And you even sent me a document that shows that.
Yes. And Cynthia McKinney, yes.
Their own document.
Yep. And Cynthia McKinney knows that RDS makes baseless attacks against people who are unwilling to support Unrig, and yet she continues to associate herself with RDS, the creator of the Unrig scam. Now, I took that from an interview, a recent interview that she did, where she is asked about, Sarah Westall asked her about her relationship with RDS, and she said, first of all, she in the email she sent to me, she says that she does not acknowledge, the baseless attacks. She acknowledges he does that and has told him not to do that, but she still associates herself with him.
Right.
And then we've got the documents that I've sent to Jason that shows right from the Unrig logs, August 5th, and right from the newsletter that he sent to everybody, that he is soliciting donations in her name, and he states that for her to pay her student loans, taxes, and provide some compensation, which includes large donors. And he does state that they have a silent donor or a private donor that is providing compensation for him and for her.
It's almost a foolish thing to say.
It's astounding.
Well, I mean, and so what do you guys think about the very real possibility that, for example, we know the CIA uses all these leverage points on people to keep them quiet or, stifle them in some way. And so it makes me wonder if having student loans and, these other obligations, and they being able to destroy a person's career, which they do routinely in order to make their point. I could imagine her being faced with this and them saying to her, look, you need to partner up with this guy because, this is what we're doing. And, otherwise, and you can pay, we'll give you some sort of compensation. Otherwise, you're done.
Well, that's just it. This is Cynthia McKinney being shown door number 2, basically. She's being forced to do this, possibly, but, the choice is submit to that and be forced to do the wrong thing, or stand up for what is the right thing, despite the consequences, and do the right thing. And that's why I wanted to do this phone interview with you two, so that we can expose this and offer Dr. McKinney yet another chance to come forward and admit the details of what's going on, or tell us that we're wrong and explain how we're wrong.
And to your point, Jason, we've seen this, and this has been very recently. Unfortunately, a lot of whistleblowers in the past were routinely snuffed out one way or another. If they couldn't be kept silent, they were, permanently silenced.
Right.
And nobody would ever know about it. 2 bullets to the back of the head. It was a suicide, and they've been getting away with that. So I get people's reluctance to come forward. But as Eric Braverman himself pointed out, that now that we have this community of thousands of people, tens of thousands, who are working together to sort of help whistleblowers and journalists and anyone who's working to try and expose this, I mean, now is your best opportunity to get the support and help that you need to, avoid being, quieted by the system again.
You've hit it right on the head, Trish. This is the exact reason why we're doing Crowdsource the Truth, to create a forum where Dr. McKinney can come forward publicly and share any information that she might have to help us expose. If we're correct, and if the evidence that we're seeing does in fact prove or indicate that this is in fact a scam, I'm doing this not to diminish Dr. McKinney's reputation, but to allow us to help her to retrieve it.
Yeah. No, that's going to go nowhere good for her long term.
And once again, Jason, you reached out to her with an email to come on your program here, and you got no response.
Correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
And that's part of her MO. Is like when you reach a certain point with her in laying out something, she just stops responding. Silence. Yeah. Which, getting back to the email that I quoted from when I responded after she said, I do not agree with his words and have told him to please refrain from baseless attacks. So she's having to manage him, number one, okay?
Right.
And then I responded, well, Cynthia, refraining from baseless attacks is different than consistent, nonstop behavior that is documented in most of his interviews. Mm-hmm. If he continues this behavior, will you continue to be associated with him? Do you really want to manage this type of behavior long term?
Right.
And no response.
Those questions.
So what do you think we should do moving forward here, Queen Tut?
Well, this interview, I think, is really important because, Crowdsource the Truth has been attacked constantly by Robert David Steele. Mm-hmm. He's associated with Cynthia McKinney. She's lending her name and her power to him. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that in itself is something we need to talk about this like we're doing. We need to do these kind of interviews because this thing needs to be laid to rest.
Yeah.
It once and for all. We have to make sure we cover every piece of information and let the crowd know this is what we're dealing with, and this is what they're doing to the crowd. It's like why is this crowd being denigrated when Robert David Steele is the architect of all the scam and has promoted and stated many, many lies constantly. He consistently lies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All you have to
Yeah.
do is look at it.
Well, I've got him. I've got him recorded on a phone call with me where he's lying. He basically calls me up and tells me, or he sent me an email in which he told me that I'm going to be arrested by the NYPD and that he has some kind of special intelligence that told him that. I called the NYPD and asked them because I'm not going to run. If the police want to arrest me, I would go and turn myself in and face the law. But he obviously lied to me about that, and in the same email, by the letter of the law, he's committed the civil tort of tortious interference by directly telling George, hey, the best thing for you to do, George, is divest yourself of any relationship with Jason and come work with me. That's the definition of tortious interference. And then he turns around and accuses me of doing that. We haven't even touched on the ignorant and racist comments that he's made, where he's repeatedly warned me that he's hired a black attorney. I mean, who goes around designating the race of their attorney? That's totally idiotic. I don't understand how Dr. McKinney can associate herself with someone. I mean, the guy's like Archie Bunker.
Yeah.
And furthermore, there's been no contact from any attorney of any color to me with regard to any lawsuit whatsoever.
And it also makes me wonder, we had talked about this on a previous broadcast, is that you start to realize that not only are there all of these independent agency covert operations going on, and then you have the foreign ones going on, and then individuals themselves have their own stuff that they're doing. So, you don't want to say it's all one big conspiracy because clearly it's not, which it certainly felt that way because in some way or another, all the pieces are connected. But I think we've also talked about the fact that people only know really their upline and their downline when they're part of something, official that's going on. So that the individuals themselves don't even necessarily know what operation they're a part of or how expansive it might be. And so that also adds a layer of opacity to this whole effort, because it's just like, okay, where, how do you parse it all out?
Yeah. I want to add one thing here. Queen Tut, you had sent me in one of the emails, and I'm going through all of them right here. This is just copied and pasted from the Unrig log, which, of course, as I said, numerous members of our crowdsourced community kept their contributions in there, I guess, specifically to receive these newsletters. And there are also some people who have emailed me saying that they like Robert David Steele and they like us, and they're confused by this whole situation. So just this quote from August 5th of 2017, I'm just reading directly from their newsletter. It says, we're behind on our fundraising. We made it last month because of 2 donations from individuals, one donating over $20,000 and the other $40,000. We're starting to pay people and really need to make at least $20,000 in the next couple of weeks to stay on schedule. Compensation for Cynthia and Robert is completely separate and being covered by a private donor. Emphasis, here's his own words. It says, emphasis is on Cynthia, who owes a lot, in bold, on her PhD student loans. And then it goes on. It goes on to say, Unrig is requesting donations so that Cynthia can have a new RV, $85,000. We bought the first RV used for $65,000, and if we can raise money, we're now thinking we should do 2 RVs. The new one for Cynthia is $85,000. This will double the visibility of our campaign as we strive to do 435 Unrig group.
Shocking, huh, Trish?
It is.
And then, Queen Tut, you had been doing some research with Rand Paul's office that you and I have spoken about, I guess privately, or no, maybe in a previous phone interview.
In the first interview we had.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to go back over that real quickly?
Well, yes, because in the beginning he was associating himself with Rand Paul, and he kept referring to Rand Paul. And you remember, Trish, when that happened. That interview was in June. And I contacted the Rand Paul's office in Kentucky, spoke with Bobby there, one of the supervisors of the office, and I asked her if they were associated with Robert David Steele in any capacity, because he kept saying, I asked him in any capacity, and I'll go into why. And she said, well, let me check it. And she got back to me. She said, no, we have no relationship. We don't know who he is or anything about this man. And I asked her to put that in writing, and she didn't want to. But, I did have that conversation. I did share it with it in the interview. And the reason why I did that is because when I was in an email exchange with RDS about Unrig and why is he perpetuating this constant state of the Election Reform Act? Why has he never, for 6 or 7 years, ever put it into a bill format and submitted it to Congress so it could actually be become an act, right?
Yeah.
You remember?
Yeah.
You might have remembered that. And so this is why he said, well, I haven't done that. I'm going to let Rand Paul's staff do that.
Right.
Okay. And so that's why I eventually contacted Bobby at part of Rand Paul's staff to confirm this. And once again, they absolutely denied any contact with him.
Yeah.
And that I have all in emails where he's saying that.
Yeah.
And now Rand Paul is garbage. It's the bottom of the line for him. Like Rand Paul
for Robert David Steele, you're saying. He's saying
Robert David Steele, he is. Yeah, now he is, because that's what he's saying. He's a complete fraud. Ron Paul's a fraud. Dennis Kucinich is a fraud.
Interesting.
Oh, please. Wow.
Well, I think we should really get this interview out so that the people in the crowdsourced community can hear it and absorb it. And what I'd like to do, Queen Tut, I'm going to be meeting with Trish in Boston next week. We've got a couple of stories to cover over there. And maybe what we could do is one of the days while I'm there, if you're available, we'd like to get you on a live broadcast. So after people have had a few days to digest what we're talking about here, they could interact with you in the comments, and any questions that might come up, you could answer interactively. Does that sound okay to you?
Yeah, that's a great idea, because I think there are a lot of people out there who really want to ask those questions. They want to. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm in agreement on that. Yeah, that would be great.
And then maybe we can follow up with Senator Paul's office in the meantime and try to get some definitive answers. I mean, it seems quite clear. If Robert David Steele is saying he's a fraud, it doesn't sound like they're working together. And in your emails with them and your previous communications with them, they don't even know who he is. How could he be creating a bill with them? And so just with that evidence alone, with that metadata right there, if he's raising money with the essential purpose being we're going to get this act put to Congress or whatever it is that he intends to do, it would certainly seem like there is absolutely no way that is going to happen in the way that he's described, right?
Oh, well, on his Unrig site, right now, under the donation, if you go down, and read that whole thing under what he lays out on the donation site, which is the Generosity Indiegogo site, he claims that they're going to have this bill, passed by September.
Which is a month from now.
Less than a
few
month.
Weeks.
Yeah.
Is there any possible way that could happen?
No, not in a million years. No.
And so that's the evidence to support the claim that this is a fraud.
It's a major piece of the scam. It is the key. That's the key piece to the whole Unrig scam, is he keeps saying that, but that's the key piece with Cynthia. How can she link herself to this and support these kind of fraudulent statements, knowing what it takes to pass a bill and make it into an act?
Yeah, he needs sponsors. I mean, he would have to have Republican and Democratic sponsors for it to even get anywhere.
And he's pretty much dished any of the sponsors. I mean, there's no sponsors for this bill now, okay?
Wow.
I guarantee it. There's no sponsors.
I'm glad we were able to shed this light on this. I'm going to get this interview up immediately, and let's talk offline, Queen, about getting you scheduled for a live appearance next week.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks so much for your time. Really great work. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
Thanks, Trish. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
And
Thank
thanks to the
you.
crowd.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Take care.